All right, it has been an eventful 24 hours regarding the Ábrego García situation, to say the least. I'm not going to give a summary because there's just so much we have to get into in this video. One thing I do want to say before we start, I want to make something clear on behalf of myself and anyone else supporting and speaking out on this issue of returning this man home. We are not defending or advocating for criminals and gang members to be released on the streets. If you believe that, you are just being dishonest and strawmanning our entire point. This is a place where you go to die. Just FYI, CCOT, where he was sent, and where we are sending hundreds of alleged people. Alleged. That is the important part here. There is no due process. There is no trial. That is what we are speaking out about. Let's be clear. This man got no trial, no due process, same with hundreds of people sent to a slave labor camp. This is no ordinary deportation, so don't even pull that card. This was deported to a foreign labor camp per a contract we have with their government. So let's be clear. Now, there is a lot to say on this situation now. A lot of the evidence has come out. I'm skeptical about some of it, and I have a lot of questions, but there are things that I'm also concerned about. We're going to start with some highlighted things here. As you may know, Senator Chris Van Hollen had gone to El Salvador to ideally meet with Ábrego García and at the very least confirm that he's alive, whether that be phone call, meeting. The end objective is to bring him home. All right, so that is a very bold move, and I thank the senator for that, because again, this is all about due process. These people are all alleged, and we're going to get into everything here in a moment. But yeah, predictably, he was not allowed to visit. He was not allowed to make a phone call, and obviously was not allowed to secure his release. Let's read some snippets from the interview afterwards. Wednesday afternoon, Senator Van Hollen said he met with El Salvador Vice President Felix Ulloa. Though he was unable to visit the Terrorism Confinement Center, or CCOT, the prison Ábrego García is being held. He was unable to speak with Ábrego García via phone call or video call, Senator Van Hollen added. Ulloa said, "You need to make earlier provisions to visit CCOT." I said, "I'm not interested in this moment of taking a tour of CCOT. I just want to meet with Mr. Ábrego García," Senator Van Hollen explained. He said he was not able to make that happen. I asked if I came back next week if I would be able to see Mr. Ábrego García. He said he couldn't promise that either. Maybe if the American embassy were to ask for a phone call or a video call, maybe that could happen, Senator Van Hollen said, describing the vice president. Ulloa told him. So I will certainly ask the American embassy to ask the government of El Salvador to connect us by phone. And it sounds like more and more Democrats, Cory Booker, etc., are coming out in support of this and want to, I believe, join another delegation back to El Salvador whenever we have a response from the American embassy. So that's where we are in that situation. Let's watch the White House's. Oh, God. Okay, let's watch this. It's sped up a little bit, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to speed it up a little bit more. The less I have to listen to Caroline Levitt talk, the better. So let's listen.
President Trump campaigned on the promise to secure our homeland and deport violent alien criminals from our communities. That is why the American people overwhelmingly reelected him back to this office, and it's why the American people defeated the Democrat Party in devastating fashion. Today, we have officially learned Democrat officials still refuse to accept the will of the American people. Maryland's Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen rushed to Dulles Airport this morning to fly to El Salvador, potentially using taxpayer dollars, to demand the release of deported, illegal alien.
All right, man, Republicans are so good at playing the political game, man. I wish Democrats had half of the political wits that Republicans have. Pulling up the tax dollar thing. which is just preposterous considering where our tax money is currently going. We did a video on this a few weeks ago that we're spending hundreds of millions to subsidize Trump's golfing events. And what's even worse, and these are at like Mar-a-Lago, properties he owns, so where all of his security, Secret Service, and all that is staying, it's going right back into his personal pockets. But no, we don't have any problems with that. Bombing Yemen, a lot of taxpayer dollars going there. We just dropped like one of the biggest bombs, non-nuclear bombs ever. I don't know if it was another Moab, but it was some other giant bomb on them quietly just, I think, this past evening or a couple of days. And obviously the genocide that Israel is committing in Gaza. So, you know, these people are shameless. And I always say, everything they say is just projection. Every accusation is an admission. So yeah, I just wanted to comment on that.
MS-13 terrorist. The Democrats and the media in this room have continually and wrongly labeled Kilmar Ábrego García as a Maryland father. There is no Maryland father. Let me reiterate. Kilmar Ábrego García is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist who was deported back to his home country. And when Kilmar Ábrego García was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money covering the ears, mouth, and eyes of presidents on various currency denominations.
Oh no. Still going with the terrorist designation and gang member designation when there's still no hard evidence. And, you know, the great thing about the Constitution and the U.S. is supposed to be a trial and due process to find out all this stuff for such a damning accusation. But no.
This is a known MS-13 gang symbol of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Ábrego García was also arrested with two other well-known members of the vicious MS-13 gang. And two separate judges found that Ábrego García was a member of MS-13, and that finding has never been disputed. And just this morning, it was revealed through Maryland court documents that Ábrego García's wife petitioned for an order of protection against him for 2 instances of domestic violence in May of 2021. And here is the order right here.
We're gonna comment more on that here in a moment because I don't want to hide that from you. I don't want to be dishonest, and I have some takes on that which I would plead you to listen to. So just keep that in mind. We're going to be getting there in a second.
The court ordered that the respondent committed the following acts of abuse. Once in May of 2021, assault in any degree. And on May 4th of 2021, he punched and scratched his wife, ripped off her shirt, and grabbed and bruised her. This is from a court in Maryland. So not only are Democrats rushing to defend an illegal criminal foreign terrorist gang member, but also an apparent woman beater. To set all of that aside, the basic fact that he was illegally inside our country and had a lawful deportation order made him subject to removal back to his home country.
So a couple of things I want to directly interject there is when she says that 2 judges or a judge ruled him as an MS-13 gang member, that was 2 immigration judges. Immigration judges are, no disrespect, much different than an actual U.S. judge. One reports to the Department of Justice under the executive branch, and the other actually reports to the judicial branch. You know, the actual legal branch. Let's be clear about that. You can look at tons of immigration judge rulings. They're not criminally, there's no criminal obligation or anything to them. And something else like they fail to mention here, so there is the domestic abuse. We're going to get more into that in a second, but what she also fails to mention is that she dropped off the protective order and didn't bother going to the trial, and basically dropped all charges and made a public statement saying that we worked it out in private and blah, 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 and that they are now stronger. We're going to read these quotes in a moment. So, and she is currently a vehemently supporting his release and return to the U.S. So just keep that all in mind.
Of El Salvador. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again. Nothing will change the fact that Ábrego García will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again. And the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the President of the United States and the Secretary of State could not be compelled to forcibly retrieve this citizen of El Salvador who is currently locked up in a maximum security prison.
That's just a lie. They literally ruled 9-0 to facilitate his return
in his home country due to his MS-13 membership. To remind the media and the Democrat Party, MS-13 are among the most vicious and dangerous.
Okay, yeah, I don't need you to give me your freaking spiel on MS-13 again. So there's a lot of omissions as they go through this that they just don't bring up. So let's look at, I want to read this before we get into the abuse case. This is just kind of a overview of the documents that the DOJ released on Ábrego García. The Department of Justice has released a document in the case of Kilmar Ábrego García, who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. The Trump administration has repeatedly claimed that Ábrego García was a member of MS-13 and recently included an allegation without providing evidence that the 29-year-old was involved in human trafficking. But in court documents examined by News 4, the only allegation Ábrego García was in a gang came from Prince George County's police officer, who was later fired for misconduct in office. The release document is the final order from an immigration judge issued October 10th, 2019, giving Ábrego García the legal status to remain in the United States. So if this guy was an actual confirmed member of MS-13, why would he be granted legal status to stay in the United States? You can't even turn around and make your normal defense and say, well, Joe Biden, he likes to release criminals and gangbangers into the street. Guess what? This was in 2019 under President Trump. Oh my goodness. If he was such a freaking criminal, why wasn't he deported then? Why wasn't he actually criminally tried for being a gang member? Why wasn't any of this evidence cited earlier? And I have so many questions. I read the whole report, but there's just so many questions. What was the outcome of these other gang members that he was with? And they also, they are trying to say he had drugs on him, which is not true. The report says that they dropped a few unknown items under a vehicle. Why are they unknown items? Why didn't you collect the items? What items are we talking about here? So many questions I have. But regardless, it would be nice if we could go through this in a place where we talk about any evidence and, like a court, and have an actual due process and a hearing before we send this guy to an extermination camp. Jesus Christ. On page 2 at the bottom, it says Exhibit 4 is a Prince George County Police Department gang field interview sheet. It was issued for the limited purpose of showing that the respondent was labeled a gang member by a law enforcement attorney who represented Ábrego García, and that proceeding said it was written by Officer Ivan Mendez, who claimed a confidential source came forward to say Ábrego García was a member of MS-13. In fact, in a document denying Ábrego García bail for the first time in April 29, 2019, a different immigration judge wrote, the determination that the respondent is a gang member appears to be trustworthy and is supported by other evidence in the record, namely information contained in the gang field interview sheet. The sheet was released today by the Department of Justice and says when officers stopped Ábrego García, he was with 2 known members of MS-13 and a third man suspected of being in the gang. The document says Ábrego García was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie with the rolls of money covering the eyes, ears, and mouth of the presidents on the separate denominations. Wearing the Chicago Bulls hat represents they are a member in good standing with MS-13. Officers contacted a past proven and reliable source of information who advised Kilmar Armando Ábrego García is an active member of MS-13 with the Western Clique. So, what happened to these other 2 gang members that were detained, confirmed, known gang members? What happened to them? What happened to the third who was suspected? And there's so much information that should be combed through here through a legal process that we are supposed to uphold in this country. But there's so many questions, and people are just blindly going with whatever the DOJ says, which is crazy given their record. If we were going based on this kind of evidence, Trump would be in jail. He would probably be given the death penalty. What are we talking about here? Trump's entire life is littered with lawsuits, fraud, and so he's a convicted felon. He was found liable for sexual assault. What are we talking about? Pete Hegseth was accused of being a woman beater and sexual assault. What are we doing? And not to mention that if you're so concerned about criminals, why did you pardon 1,500 of them that were involved in January 6th? This is why I can't take anything you say seriously or in good faith. Let's see. In a statement to News 4, Lucia Curo, the attorney who represented Ábrego García at his immigration hearing, said, at Kilmar Ábrego García's immigration court hearing, the ICE attorney stated to the judge that the only intel they had on him was, in fact, from the intel from the PG gang unit officer. They had nothing else, and the PGA officer responsible for the allegations was later fired. News 4 attempted on Wednesday to speak with Mendez, who was fired from the force in December 2022 after online court record showed he pleaded guilty to one count of misconduct in office, a charge that had nothing to do with the arrest of Ábrego García. Mendez was accused of providing confidential information to a sex worker, but there was no answer at his Maryland home, and he did not return a call or respond to text messages. So far, the Trump administration has not provided any documented evidence that Ábrego García is a member of MS-13. He was repeatedly denied being a member of a gang and has no criminal record in the U.S. or El Salvador. Hours later, the Department of Homeland Security posted on an X account images of a temporary protective order against Kilmar Ábrego García in May of 2021. I'm just going to stop there and go straight to here. So we're going to go from some of the things from his current wife had gone to court twice, I believe, or gone to the police twice for domestic violence. Let's look at some of those. I'm not going to hide those from you. Punched and scratched her eye, causing her to bleed. Got angry and started yelling again to the point that he ripped her shorts and shirt off. And I ran into the bathroom. He ran behind me and grabbed me by the arm. I have marks on my left arm as well. At this point, I'm afraid to be close to him. I have multiple photos and videos of how violent he can be. Vázquez Sura obtained a temporary protective order against Ábrego García in May of 2021. And then that was basically dropped. We'll see in a second. She didn't end up showing up to the trial or court, whatever hearing. After surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution, out of a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a protective order in case things escalated. Okay, we were able to work through this situation privately as a family, included by going to counseling. Vázquez Sura said, Kilmar has always been a loving partner and father, and I will continue to stand by him and demand justice for him. The protective order was dismissed a month after it was issued on June 17, 2021, after Vázquez Sura failed to appear in court, according to a signed order of dismissal by a judge. So yeah, that is pretty damning, and I'm not going to lie. That's bad. That's bad. Is that send him to an extermination camp bad? No. Is that proving that he's a gang member bad? No. The big problem I hear with the framing around this is we put so much focus on those claims and those testaments that she was abused, but we don't put any like serious consideration for her statements afterwards saying that like we worked it out. I may have overreacted. I don't believe that. I'm going to be honest. And they worked it out, and now they're stronger from it. Now, they might actually have worked it out and be stronger from it, and evidence points to that, considering they are still together, and despite him being far, far away, this abusive man to her, allegedly, she is out there every single day demanding for his release. But no, we don't talk about that part. That's the part we have to hide. There are so many questions here. At the very least, for people who are for his incarceration, you should at the very least be for bringing him home and having him tried in a court of law for all of these allegations, have a whole discovery process, and then have an actual verdict. Sorry, immigration judges can't make criminal rulings. Just because they say you're an MS-13 based on shit evidence doesn't mean you're an MS-13. Let's be real. And also, let's note, he came here when he was 16 to escape gang violence in El Salvador at the time. So yeah, like, and now the administration's trying to claim that he said he was in a gang, he admitted to being in a gang and he was escaping a rival gang. Like, they're just saying shit, man. Like, it's fair to have questions with all this new stuff coming out. And that supports my case even more. Give him due process and a trial. Because he was legally here at the time of his deportation, whether you like the reason for that legal status or not. Like, the hypocrisy here, it's crazy. Like, I'm tired of this administration being so much about law and order when Trump is literally a sexual abuser, a convicted felon. Pete Hegseth has been accused of sexual violence or abuse, whatever. Like, what are we doing? How can you look at these people and be like, yeah, they're telling the truth? Like, Jesus Christ. Every single person before they get sent, we shouldn't be sending anyone to an extermination camp, let's just be clear. But if we are, then they should all be given a fair trial and due process, because alleged is just not going to cut it. And if you look at this case objectively, there are so many questions. And at the very least, you should want this man to stand trial. Oh boy. And like, there hasn't been any domestic disputes reported since. There hasn't been any more gang related crimes alleged against him since. So like, there's so many things that people aren't looking at. Okay? Like, this is such a big deal. You can't just be like, oh, I'm glad he's there. This is an extermination camp. Republicans were calling for Senator Chris Van Hollen. They were hoping that he would be in prison there too. Like, what are we talking about? What is this country became? I feel like I'm losing my damn mind. Like, Jesus Christ, I'm at the point where we should just send this entire administration to frickin' CCOT. Jesus. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next. If you made it to this point in the video, I just want to give a special thank you. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button down below, and if you really enjoyed it, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button while you're down there. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I will try to reply to any and all comments that I can. Until next time, watch that video on screen.